Absolutely. Here's a warm and friendly 3-line hook to start your script. Have you ever noticed how the way we talk to ourselves can change everything? Sometimes it's those quiet moments of self-reflection that open the door to something bigger, a new way of seeing the world and our place in it. Today, let's explore a powerful story of faith, belonging, and transformation that's quietly reshaping lives across the Western world. There's a moment in life, quiet, unannounced, often inconvenient, when the world outside falls away. You're no longer driven by the next appointment, the next obligation, the next thing you're supposed to be. Instead, you're left with the one person who never leaves your side. And in that sacred space, something begins to whisper. For some people, it starts in the stillness after loss. For others, it begins in the middle of a bustling, seemingly perfect life, when for no visible reason, they feel empty. This whisper isn't loud. It doesn't come with fireworks or angels. It's not the kind of voice that demands attention. It's gentle, persistent, and it sounds like a question you can't ignore. Is there more than this? I've spoken to countless women over the years, professionals, artists, mothers, thinkers, who have all confessed the same thing in different ways. They were living full lives on the outside, but starving on the inside, spiritually hungry. Achievements weren't enough. Relationships didn't fill it. Even purpose-driven careers sometimes didn't reach that sacred place in the heart where real peace lives. What I've noticed is this: when people begin to listen to that voice, the one that calls them inward, they're often led to places they never imagined. For many in the Western world today, that path is leading them toward Islam. Not out of rebellion, not out of desperation, but out of a need to feel grounded in something deeper than the fleeting applause of modern life. The growth of Islam in the West can't be fully understood through statistics or news coverage. You can't chart it with politics. You have to look inward at the emotional and spiritual climate that so many people, especially women, are living in. It's not about religion for religion's sake. It's about that voice inside, the one that says, I want to live my life on purpose, the one that wants structure but not rigidity, simplicity but not emptiness, devotion but not dogma. People are being drawn to Islam because it speaks to that yearning. It offers a daily rhythm that brings mindfulness, a community that encourages accountability, and a deep personal relationship with the divine that isn't filtered through hierarchy or performance. One woman once told me that she was drawn to Islam because it allowed her to be with God, not just believe in God. That distinction was everything for her. It wasn't about replacing one tradition with another. It was about finally stepping into something that made her feel spiritually held. When you hear the call to prayer echo for the first time, something happens inside you, whether you're Muslim or not. There's a vibration, a centering, a reminder that life is bigger than what's right in front of us. And for many Western seekers, that call is resonating with the question they've already been asking in the quiet corners of their lives. There's something especially profound about how this spiritual curiosity is rising in women. In a world that often teaches us to perform, to please, to produce, Islam offers a counter-narrative, a chance to go inward, to be intentional, to realign with sacred discipline. This isn't about oppression or restriction. It's about remembrance, about honoring the voice that says, I am more than what the world sees. I am a soul, and I want to be fed. Western culture, for all its gifts, often leaves little room for the sacred. We're taught to hustle, to curate, to optimize. But that whisper, the one that starts the journey, doesn't care about Instagram followers or resume lines. It wants stillness. It wants truth. It wants God, not in theory, but in presence, in breath, in the way we rise in the morning and rest at night, in how we speak to our Creator when no one else is listening, in how we speak to ourselves. The inner voice of spiritual curiosity is not a trend. It's not about joining something to fit in or rebel. It's about returning to something ancient that feels oddly familiar. It's about being brave enough to ask the deeper questions and being quiet enough to hear the answers that have been waiting. waiting, not outside of us, but within. There is a deep, aching human truth that no one talks about enough. We all long to belong. It's woven into the very fabric of who we are. From the moment we take our first breath, we search for connection, someone who sees us, understands us, holds space for us in a way that feels real and unconditional. In today's fast-paced, disconnected world, that longing is even more profound. So much of Western society tells us we should be independent, self-sufficient, and above all, in control. We're encouraged to carve out our own path, to hustle harder, to shine brighter, alone. And yet, in the silence after the noise, so many people feel isolated, fragmented, and lost. It's like walking through a crowd and feeling invisible. It's the paradox of modern life, connected on screens, but disconnected at heart. This is where the power of community comes in, the power that Islam offers so clearly and profoundly. For many who are drawn to this faith in the West, it's not just about personal spirituality, it's about finding a home, a family, a tribe that embraces you with open arms and reminds you that you are never truly alone. Islam is built on a foundation of togetherness. The very word ummah means community, one that transcends borders, races, and backgrounds. It's a collective heartbeat that says, you belong here. And in a world so often divided, that promise carries an immense weight. When you witness the gatherings of Muslims, the shared prayers, the communal celebrations, the acts of charity and kindness, it's clear that this is more than ritual. It's a living, breathing network of support. It's people coming together not because they have to, but because they choose to, because they recognize that belonging is not just about proximity, but about shared values and mutual care. Women especially often find themselves drawn to this aspect of Islam. In communities where the world can sometimes feel harsh or judgmental, Islam's emphasis on compassion and sisterhood becomes a sanctuary. It's a space where women lift each other up, where they can be vulnerable without fear, and where the collective strength becomes a shield against life's storms. This sense of belonging fills a void that many hadn't even realized was there. It offers a rhythm and structure that invites people to step out of isolation and into fellowship. It's in the shared meals during Ramadan, the heartfelt conversations after prayers, the simple greetings of As-salamu alaykum, peace be upon you, that a quiet revolution happens in the heart, a healing, a restoration. In the Western world, where social bonds can be fragile and fleeting, the experience of this kind of community can be transformative. It shifts the narrative from competition to cooperation, from loneliness to connection. It teaches us that no matter where we come from, or what we've been through, we are worthy of love and belonging. There's something profoundly human about gathering together in faith, in shared intention, in common purpose. It reminds us that we are part of something larger than ourselves. And in that realization, we find both humility and empowerment. We learn that our struggles are not just our own, but belong to a collective story of perseverance and hope. For those embracing Islam, the sense of community often becomes the anchor that keeps them grounded. When life feels overwhelming, when doubt creeps in, the Ummah is there, offering encouragement, friendship, and a reminder that the journey is not meant to be walked alone. And this is not just about physical proximity or participation in rituals. It's about the spiritual energy that flows between people when they share values rooted in compassion, justice, and mercy. It's about a belonging so deep that it nourishes the soul and restores faith in humanity. The world around us may change, but the human need for connection remains constant. And as Islam rises in the Western world, it's clear that the power of community and belonging is not just a byproduct, it's a beacon. It calls out to those who are seeking not only faith, but a family, a home where their hearts can rest, where their spirits can grow, and where they are welcome just as they are. In a world that seems to move faster every day, where the noise never quite stops, and the demands never seem to lessen, there's a profound hunger, a yearning for simplicity, for something clear and steady amid the chaos, the kind of peace that comes from knowing exactly where you stand, what you believe, and how to carry yourself through life with intention. This is the kind of beauty that many find in the structure offered by Islam, a faith that is both deeply ancient and deeply deeply relevant to modern life. There's something magnetic about a way of living that guides you through each day, with rituals and rhythms designed to bring you back to yourself. Islam offers this through its pillars: the 5 daily prayers, fasting during Ramadan, acts of charity, and more. These aren't just traditions to be observed, but practices that anchor the soul. They create a sacred container where the distractions of the world can fall away, and what's essential can come into focus. For many who come to Islam in the West, this structure is like a lifeline. Life as we often know it can feel disorganized, fragmented, even overwhelming. There's pressure to be everything at once: successful, creative, available, resilient. But when you embrace a faith that invites you to slow down 5 times a day, to pause, to reconnect, it transforms your experience of time and presence. The act of prayer becomes not a chore, but a gift, a moment to breathe, to reflect, to realign with what truly matters. Simplicity in Islam is not about restriction or deprivation. On the contrary, it's about clarity, about stripping away the excess to find the core. It teaches that spirituality doesn't need to be complicated or distant. It can be found in the quiet moments of intention, the daily disciplines that remind you belong to something greater than yourself. This approach resonates deeply with people living in a Western culture that often values complexity, busyness, and accumulation. The constant barrage of options, the pressure to multitask, and the flood of information can leave many feeling scattered and exhausted. The invitation to return to simplicity and structure is like coming home to a place where you can finally rest and be known. One of the most beautiful aspects of this simplicity is its universality. The 5 daily prayers, for example, are the same whether you're in a bustling city or a quiet village. They connect individuals across the globe in a shared experience of devotion and mindfulness. There's comfort in knowing that this daily routine is part of a larger story, a story that has sustained people for centuries and continues to sustain them today. Beyond prayer, the structure of Islam provides guidance on how to live with integrity, compassion, and purpose. There are clear principles that help believers navigate relationships, challenges, and even their own inner struggles. This moral compass is not meant to confine, but to liberate, offering a way to live authentically and with intention in a complex world. For many women especially, the structure of Islam offers a framework within which they can exercise agency and self-respect. Modesty, for instance, is not merely about dress, it's about honoring oneself and one's boundaries. It's a deliberate choice to present oneself with dignity and grace, aligned with inner values rather than external pressures. This intentional way of living, grounded in clear guidelines, creates a sense of empowerment that many find deeply fulfilling. It's also important to recognize that the beauty of this simplicity is found not just in external rituals, but in the internal transformation they inspire. As people commit to daily prayer, fasting, and reflection, they often describe a shift in how they see themselves in the world. There's a growing awareness of their own worth and a deepening of gratitude. The structure becomes a pathway to inner peace, helping them to quiet the mind and calm the heart. In this way, the simplicity and structure of Islam are not a limitation but a doorway, a way to access a life of meaning and balance. It's a reminder that faith is not about complexity or confusion, but about returning to the essentials, about nurturing a relationship with the divine that is steady, reliable, and loving. As the world around us grows louder and more complicated, the call towards simplicity and structure becomes a gentle, compelling invitation. It's a chance to step off the treadmill of distraction and step into a rhythm that nourishes the soul. And for many who hear this call, it's the beginning of a journey toward a deeper, more grounded way of living. When we hear about Islam in the news or through social media, it's often wrapped in headlines filled with fear, division, and misunderstanding. For many people in the Western world, their first introduction to Islam might come through stories that don't reflect the everyday reality of the faith or the people who practice it. This gap between perception and reality creates barriers of fear, of judgment, of distance. Yet beyond those barriers lies a profound awakening, a growing growing awareness that is changing hearts and minds in ways that are quietly powerful. Misunderstandings about Islam are not new, but in today's polarized world, they can feel especially heavy. These misconceptions paint a picture that is incomplete and sometimes harmful. They reduce a rich and diverse faith into stereotypes that feel alien or threatening. This narrative can make it difficult for people to see beyond the surface, to understand the humanity and the spiritual beauty that exists within Islam. What's remarkable, though, is how many people are choosing to look past these misconceptions and explore for themselves. They are stepping out of the shadow of fear and into the light of personal experience. This awakening often begins with simple questions, curiosity that leads to discovery. People are reading, listening, meeting Muslims in their communities, and finding that what they learn directly from lived experience is vastly different from the stories they grew up hearing. One of the most inspiring aspects of this awakening is how many women are finding empowerment within Islam. Contrary to many Western assumptions, women embracing Islam often speak about gaining a renewed sense of purpose, dignity, and strength. They describe it as a faith that honors their voice, their choices, and their spirituality. It's a journey that brings clarity and confidence, a way of living that feels authentic and deeply respectful of their individuality. These women often share stories of how embracing the faith helped them reclaim their identity in a way that felt liberating rather than limiting. They talk about the freedom in choosing modesty as an act of self-respect and the power in joining a community that supports their growth. It's an awakening that transforms not just how they see themselves, but how they navigate the world with grace and resilience. What is also awakening is the recognition that Islam is not monolithic. It's not a single story but a tapestry of diverse voices, cultures, and interpretations. This diversity reflects the real complexity of faith, its challenges, and its beauty. The awakening is about seeing Islam through these varied lenses and realizing that it can be a faith of peace, justice, and compassion in many different contexts. In this unfolding understanding, the act of speaking to oneself becomes crucial. Many who come to Islam describe a shift in their inner dialogue, a change in how they relate to their own doubts, fears, and hopes. Where once there may have been judgment or self-criticism, there is now compassion and a sense of alignment with a higher purpose. This internal awakening often mirrors the external one, as people learn to listen more deeply to themselves, to others, and to the divine. The journey from misunderstanding to awakening is not always easy. It requires courage to question what you thought you knew, to confront biases, and to embrace new truths that may challenge long-held beliefs. But this is where transformation begins. It is in the willingness to move beyond fear into curiosity, beyond judgment into empathy, that true awakening happens. Communities across the West are witnessing this change as more people, especially young adults and women, are exploring Islam not through the lens of fear, but through the lens of faith and human connection. They are finding stories of kindness, justice, and mercy that resonate deeply with their own values. These stories offer hope in a time when many are searching for meaning and belonging. This awakening also invites a broader conversation about how we see each other as human beings, beyond labels, beyond politics, beyond the headlines. It asks us to recognize the common ground that exists in the shared quest for peace, purpose, and dignity. It reminds us that faith, at its core, is a deeply personal and transformative experience, not something to be feared or misunderstood. As more people step into this awakening, they become ambassadors of a different narrative, one that celebrates diversity, encourages dialogue, and honors the sacredness in every journey. It's a story that is still unfolding, quietly but powerfully, changing perceptions one heart at a time. Keynote 5. Speaking to the soul. The role of self-talk in spiritual growth. The way we speak to ourselves shapes the very essence of who we are. It is in the quiet conversations we hold within our minds, the words we whisper or shout in moments of joy or despair, that our inner world is created and sustained. These internal dialogues are the foundation of our self-worth, our resilience, and our faith. In the journey of spiritual growth, learning to speak to oneself with kindness, reverence, and honesty becomes not just helpful, but transformative. Many people who find their way to Islam describe a profound change in how they relate to themselves. It's as if a new language has been discovered, a language of compassion and respect that had been buried beneath years of self-doubt, criticism, and confusion. This new way of speaking to oneself is deeply tied to the spiritual teachings of the faith, which emphasize mercy, forgiveness, and the intrinsic worth of every soul. In a culture that often encourages harsh self-judgment, perfectionism, and relentless comparison, the invitation to speak to oneself differently can feel revolutionary. Islam, with its emphasis on the mercy of God and the dignity of the individual, offers a framework for this transformation. Believers learn that they are not defined by their mistakes or shortcomings, but by their efforts to grow and align with a higher purpose. This perspective nurtures a gentler, more forgiving inner voice. This process often begins with awareness, becoming conscious of the narratives we tell ourselves. Many of us carry stories rooted in fear or shame that shape our identity in limiting ways. The spiritual journey invites us to examine these stories and to rewrite them in the light of divine compassion. This doesn't mean ignoring reality or avoiding accountability, but rather approaching ourselves with honesty and grace, recognizing our human imperfection and infinite potential. For many who embrace Islam, prayer and meditation become tools to nurture this kind of self-talk. The rituals provide regular moments to pause, reflect, and realign with a sense of peace and purpose. In these sacred pauses, the soul learns to listen to God, to its own deepest needs, and to the quiet voice of love within. The repetition of prayers is not just a religious duty, it is a way to train the mind and heart to speak differently, to shift from criticism to encouragement, from despair to hope. The words we use when we speak to ourselves carry power. They shape our emotions, influence our decisions, and determine how we respond to life's challenges. When self-talk is filled with kindness and faith, it becomes a source of strength. It helps us persevere through difficulties, embrace our true selves, and cultivate resilience in the face of uncertainty. This transformation is often described by converts as a spiritual awakening that starts inside. They speak of moving from an internal landscape filled with judgment and fear to one filled with acceptance and love. It's a shift that changes not only how they see themselves, but also how they engage with the world. When the soul is spoken to with respect, the outer world begins to reflect that inner harmony. Women in particular often share how this new self-talk empowers them to reclaim their identities in ways they never thought possible. It gives them permission to set boundaries, pursue their dreams, and honor their bodies and minds as sacred vessels. This internal dialogue becomes a foundation for living authentically and courageously, grounded in faith and self-respect. There's also a communal aspect to this transformation. As people begin to speak more compassionately to themselves, they often find it easier to extend that same grace to others. The ripple effect creates communities that are more understanding, supportive, and connected. The spiritual teaching that every soul is worthy of kindness becomes not just an idea, but a lived reality. In this way, speaking to the soul is not just an individual practice, but a spiritual discipline that nurtures the entire community. It reminds us that the journey of faith is deeply personal, but also profoundly relational. How we speak to ourselves shapes how we relate to others, and how we experience our place in the world. Learning to speak to oneself in this sacred way is a journey. It requires patience, practice, and often the guidance of a loving community or teacher. But the rewards are immense: a renewed sense of peace, a clearer understanding of purpose, and a deepening of faith that carries us through life's ups and downs. The invitation to change our inner dialogue is an invitation to reclaim our souls, to step into the fullness of who we are meant to be. It is a call to nurture the voice inside us that says, "You are worthy, you are loved, You are enough. When we listen deeply to that quiet inner voice, to the call for community, to the invitation of simplicity, and even to the moments when misunderstanding meets awakening, we begin to understand something profound about faith, about identity, and about the human spirit. The rapid growth of Islam in the Western world is not just a story of numbers or headlines. It is a story of hearts seeking truth, souls craving belonging, and minds yearning for clarity amid complexity. It reminds us that spiritual journeys are deeply personal, yet beautifully communal, that faith can offer structure without rigidity, and simplicity without emptiness, that beneath the noise and misconception lies a pathway toward awakening, one that begins with how we speak to ourselves, kindly, honestly, and with faith. And perhaps most importantly, it is a reminder that each of us is invited to step into a deeper conversation with ourselves and the divine, to find in that sacred dialogue a rising faith that transforms not only individuals, but entire communities, shaping a future filled with hope, compassion, and understanding.